There is a truth that makes many people so uncomfortable that they avoid thinking about it. Not because it is wrong, but because it is too accurate. That truth is this: you have never truly been alone. Even in the moment you believe no one sees you, no one hears you, and no one cares. Even when the room is completely quiet, when the screen has gone dark, when the world feels like it has turned its back on you, that silence is not empty, it is carrying far more than you realize. We grow up with an unspoken assumption that rarely gets challenged, that only what our eyes can see and our ears can hear is real, that the world is limited to the streets we walk, the faces we meet, the sounds we can detect, and that anything beyond our awareness, if it cannot be measured or verified instantly, either does not exist or does not matter. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if reality has more than one layer? What if the force shaping your life most powerfully is the very thing you cannot see? Pause for a second and think about the moment you make a decision when no one is around. A small choice that seems harmless. A passing thought you quickly brush aside. A sentence you whisper inside your mind that no one else can hear. Are you sure those moments truly vanish? Or are they being held somewhere inside a system you have never seen, but that has never once been absent? This is where belief in the unseen begins, not with ritual, not with appearance, but with the awareness that life is not only happening on the surface. There is another layer of reality moving alongside you every second, a layer where silence has weight, where intention has value, where the things you assume no one knows are often the things most clearly recorded. When people stop believing in anything beyond what they can see, they begin living carelessly with themselves. They speak without thinking. They act without reflection. They convince themselves that as long as no one notices, it does not matter. But the unseen world does not operate by that logic. In that realm, there is no such thing as no one. There is only what is recorded and what is neglected. And the frightening part is not that you are being recorded. The frightening part is living your entire life without realizing what you are leaving behind. Belief in what you cannot see does not make a person weaker. It wakes them up. It breaks the illusion that life is a string of random moments that disappear without consequences. And it forces you to face an uncomfortable but necessary truth. Every day you are building something even when you are not aware of it. And what you are building does not only belong to the present. It reaches forward into a future you have not yet touched. Maybe you have felt this before but never found the words. A strange anxiety after doing something wrong even when no one discovers it. A quiet relief after choosing what is right even when no one praises you. A hidden weight pressing on your chest when you stay silent in the face of injustice. And there are moments of peace that feel almost impossible to explain when you restrain yourself, when you step back, when you choose the right silence at the right time. Those feelings are not random, they are signs that you are brushing against an order bigger than yourself. It's welcome to Prophetic History Explained. If you are hearing these words, there is a strong chance you have asked yourself before, what is really happening beneath the ordinary surface of life? And if that question has ever lived inside you, this journey was made for you. Because when people begin to realize that silence is never empty, that no moment is truly meaningless, the way they see life changes forever. They begin to walk more slowly, speak more carefully, and live with more depth. Not because they are terrified, but because they understand they are existing inside a reality far larger than what the human eye can see. And this is only the beginning. What is operating in the unseen world is more complex, more intimate, and more influential than you ever imagined. What you think is private has never truly belonged only to you, and what you think is small can carry consequences that stretch far beyond this life. If you feel your heartbeat slowing, if you feel something shifting inside you, stay here. This journey will not be gentle, but it is necessary. And if you want to support Prophetic History Explained so we can keep creating content that is deep, honest, and awakening like this, subscribe right now. Because what is about to unfold will change the way you look at your own life. Once someone begins to realize that silence is not empty, another question inevitably appears, whether they want it to or not. If every moment has weight, what is holding those moments? If no one is around, if there are no human eyes watching, what guarantees that life does not slip away like a chain of actions that leaves no trace? In this world does not run on moral chaos the way many people assume. Right and wrong are not decided by crowds. It is not a game where only what is visible gets remembered. Beneath the noise of everyday life, there is a quiet system of record that is precise, impartial, and unbroken. A system that needs no spotlight, no voice, no applause, yet misses nothing. People often believe they live two lives, a public life where they are seen, judged, praised, and criticized, and a private life where they assume they are completely free beyond observation. But that is only a feeling, not the truth. Private life is not life without witnesses. It is simply life without human witnesses. In that unseen order, every word carries the same weight, whether it is shouted in front of a crowd or whispered in a sealed room. Every intention is measured, even if it never becomes action. Not because the unseen world is harsh, but because it is perfectly just. It is not fooled by appearances. It is not blinded by reputation. It is not moved by the stories people tell about themselves. What makes many people uneasy is not that there is a record, but that the record does not depend on how they feel. No one can negotiate with it. No one can delay it. No one can erase it with a late apology. What happened is preserved exactly as it was. Not exaggerated, not softened, not rewritten. But here is where a common misunderstanding shows up. Many people assume that being recorded means being watched for the purpose of punishment. They imagine a cold surveillance that turns life into pressure and fear. The reality is the opposite. The system of record does not exist to threaten people. It exists to ensure that no good deed is ever forgotten. If there were no record, silent goodness would vanish. Patience when no one understands you. Kindness when no one thanks you. Restraint when no one is watching. All of it would become meaningless. But because there is a record beyond this world, the smallest things can carry the greatest meaning. A glance that turns away from what is wrong. A sentence swallowed before it becomes harm. A decision to choose what is right even when no one demands it. Most people are trained to live for the reactions of others. They adjust their behavior based on eyes around them, based on praise or criticism, based on whether they are acknowledged or ignored. But when they realize there is a record that does not depend on people, they begin building an inner morality. A morality that does not need a stage, an audience, or applause. That is when private life becomes the greatest test, not the dramatic acts, but the small choices repeated every day. How a person treats their own thoughts, what they allow themselves to nourish and what they choose to extinguish. How they behave when they know there will be no immediate consequences from the world around them. And what is worth reflecting on is this. This system of record is not in a hurry. It does not intervene instantly or react on the spot. It allows people the freedom to choose, the freedom to build, the freedom to drift away from what is right if they insist. But it never forgets. No moment is lost simply because time passes. No action becomes harmless just because no one mentions it again. When people understand this, and they begin looking at themselves differently, they stop asking only, "What will others think?" and start asking, "What kind of person am I becoming?" They no longer live to maintain an image. They live to protect inner integrity. And in a world where everything can be distorted by words and visuals, that quiet integrity becomes rare and priceless. Living with the awareness that everything is recorded does not take away freedom. It frees you from dependence on the eyes of others. It allows you to live more slowly, more deeply, and more honestly with yourself. Because in the end, what remains is not how the world remembers you, but how you actually lived when no one was there to witness it. If someone truly believes life is shaped only by personal will and external circumstances, they are overestimating their own independence. And the reality is that every thought and every decision happens inside an unseen environment where multiple forces exist at once. Not every force is loud, not every influence is easy to detect, but those quiet influences are what shape the long direction of a human life. The human soul is not a neutral, empty space. It is more like a piece of land where visitors constantly pass through. Some influences come and go without leaving a mark. Others stay quietly, planting seeds so small you barely notice, then waiting for time to do the rest. And what makes people most vulnerable is not direct attack, but the assumption that every thought begins from within themselves. There are communities that exist alongside humanity, sharing the same space but not the same form. They are not imagination, and they are not all-powerful beings. They have lives, choices, responsibility, and limits just like human beings. Most of them remain separate and do not involve themselves with people. But when boundaries are crossed, when respect disappears, friction begins. That friction is rarely dramatic. It does not arrive as sensational stories. It slips into the moments people are most careless, when remembrance gets neglected, when prayer becomes rare, when the mind grows empty and loses its anchor. In those moments, unseen influence finds a place to stand. But the most dangerous threat on this battlefield does not come from parallel beings. It comes from an enemy who understands humans better than they understand themselves. An enemy who does not need power to win, only time. He does not force. He does not command. He does not push. He waits. He watches. He memorizes your habits, your weaknesses, in your exhaustion, your pride, the small cracks in your inner life. His strategy is not to drag you down instantly. That would be too obvious. Instead, he trains you to get used to drifting. A small delay of good today, a small compromise with wrong tomorrow, a quiet excuse because everyone does it, and before you realize it, you are far from where you began without even feeling like you left anything behind. The terrifying part is not falling. The terrifying part is normalizing the fall. When the heart no longer reacts strongly to what is wrong. When the conscience stops speaking clearly. When warnings become faint and get dismissed as extreme, outdated, or unrealistic. That is when the battlefield has already tilted. This enemy does not attack only individuals. He works through relationships. He plants comparison inside family bonds. He magnifies flaws and hides blessings. He turns disagreement into resentment and differences into division. He does not need to destroy from outside. It is enough to make people turn against each other. Even those who seem strongest are not beyond his reach. He approaches them through a different door, not through obvious temptation, but through subtle arrogance. He pushes people to measure their worth by comparing themselves to others. He turns effort into pride and devotion into superiority. And when that happens, a person thinks they are rising while they are quietly sliding into another direction. The irony is that this enemy cannot force anyone. He only invites. Every whisper is a door, and you decide whether to open it. But the more often you open it, the harder it becomes to shut. Not because the door gets locked, but because you grow used to leaving it open. Yet this battlefield is not a place where people are powerless. Unseen influence gains strength only when the soul is empty. A heart nourished by remembrance is not easy to enter. A life with a true anchor is not easily pulled off course by vague suggestions. When people actively fill the emptiness inside, the whispers lose their ground. Victory in this war does not come through dramatic acts. It comes through quiet consistency, through returning to what is right after going wrong, through recognizing unseen influence before it takes root, through keeping light inside the soul so darkness has nowhere to hide. And that is why the unseen battlefield becomes the most decisive battlefield of a human life. There is a moment when every argument ends, every assumption collapses, and every story people have told about themselves loses its ability to protect them. That moment does not arrive with thunder or lightning. It arrives quietly. A final breath. A brief pause so subtle that those still alive may not even realize what has changed. But for the one who has just left the body, it is the moment the curtain is pulled aside. Death is not the disappearance of awareness. It is the exposure of awareness. Everything that used to be hidden behind routine, behind the noise of life, behind repeated excuses, suddenly has nowhere to hide. A person is no longer speaking to the world. They are facing themselves, and that confrontation happens in a space that has always been near but never visible in this life. Barzakh is not sleep. It is not an empty gap between two states. It is a reality that begins the moment the body loses control. Time is no longer felt the same way. There is no day and night as you know it. No calendar, no markers, only awareness, sharper than it has ever been. An awareness no longer scattered by noise, no longer distracted by short-term goals. When a person enters that state, the first thing they feel is not fear, but clarity. And that clarity can bring peace or panic depending on how they lived. Those who trained themselves to live with truth even when it was hard often feel lighter. Those who spent their lives avoiding truth feel weight crushed down instantly. Not because punishment begins at that second, but because self-deception is no longer possible. There are no social roles there, no titles, no carefully built image, no long explanations to calm the conscience. Everything collapses into the core, the repeated choices, the values prioritized, the good that was delayed and the truth that was neglected while there was still time to fix it. Some people realize the things they worried about for decades were actually small. Some realize the things they treated as nothing carried weight they never imagined. An apology never spoken, a right action never taken, a truth delayed because of fear of loss. Barzakh does not create these realities, it simply reveals them with a clarity life on earth never allows. The experience there is not identical for everyone. Some souls feel as if a heavy burden has finally been lifted. Some feel compressed by what they stored inside themselves for years. Not everyone suffers and not everyone is calm. Barzakh is personal in a way that no one can borrow someone else's experience to prepare themselves. What makes Barzakh so sobering is not whether it looks harsh or gentle, but its absolute honesty. There is no space for vagueness, no gray zone to hide, no audience to impress, only a life that has just been lived reflected back without addition or subtraction. And this happens before any final public judgment, before the open weighing, before proclamations. Barzakh is like a waiting room where a person must sit with themselves for the first time in the most honest way. Many people assume death will free them from responsibility. In reality, it removes distraction, so responsibility becomes clearer than ever. That is why people often underestimate the weight of ordinary days. They assume only the big moments decide destiny. But in Barzakh, what becomes clearest is the chain of small choices repeated over and over. How a person treated truth when no one forced them to be honest. How they reacted to what is right when there was no immediate reward. How they delayed good because they assumed tomorrow would still be there. Barzakh is not the end, but it is the strongest reminder that this life was not given merely to be survived. It was given to prepare for something larger. Everything you build inside yourself follows you whether you want it to or not. No material luggage comes with you, only what became part of you. And when you consider that, the question is no longer, what will death feel like? The question becomes, who am I becoming while I am still alive? Because Barzakh does not transform a person, it exposes them. And that exposure begins the moment the curtain of this world is pulled aside. When someone truly understands that the unseen world is not just a story to listen to and move on from, but a reality woven into every moment, the most important question is no longer what exists out there. It becomes, how will I live from this moment forward? Because awareness that does not lead to change is just another piece of information. The unseen was not revealed to feed curiosity. It was revealed to wake people up. Living with awareness of the unseen does not mean living in fear or obsession. It does not turn life into a mental prison where every action is paralyzed by anxiety. It does the opposite. It frees a person from inner chaos. When you know everything carries meaning, you stop chasing every external stimulation. You begin choosing. Choosing your words, choosing your actions, choosing what to ignore. A mindful person is not someone who never makes mistakes. They are someone who refuses to get used to mistakes. They notice earlier when they are drifting and return sooner before drifting becomes identity. They understand strength is not in never falling. Strength is in refusing to let a fall define who they become. Awareness of the unseen makes a person speak more slowly, not because they are terrified their words are recorded, but because they understand words have weight. One sentence can build or destroy. One comment can become a burden inside someone's chest for years. When you realize no word truly dissolves into air, you think before you speak, and sometimes you choose silence as an act of responsibility. And it also changes how a person behaves when no one is watching. Choices in the dark become more important than actions in the spotlight, because that is where a person's true nature shows itself most clearly. When you have no motivation from outside eyes, what still keeps you with what is right? The answer to that question is what stays with you the longest. This awareness can also make a person softer with others. You realize every human being is at a different stage of awakening. You become slower to judge and slower to label. You do not rush to place yourself above anyone, because you understand what is recorded is not comparison. It is sincerity, not moral performance, but real effort to do right within your own circumstances. When you look at life through the lens of the unseen, it no longer feels like a series of days you must endure. And it becomes a continuous conversation. Every action becomes an answer. Every choice becomes a response. Every moment of restraint becomes progress, even if no one notices. And every return after a mistake becomes proof that the heart is still alive. The unseen world does not demand perfection. It does not require people to become something beyond their capacity. It requires honesty. Honesty with yourself, honesty in intention, honesty in admitting weakness and repairing it. Because what is recorded is not a flawless exterior, it is the direction of the heart. When people live with this kind of awareness, they begin to feel a strange lightness. Not because life becomes easier, but because they stop resisting its meaning. They understand every trial carries an opportunity to grow. And every moment can become a brick placed into the future if it is placed correctly. And slowly they stop living to escape death. They start living so they do not have to be terrified when they remember it. Not because they can guarantee an outcome, but because they know they lived with direction, depth, and responsibility in the days they were given. The unseen world is not far away. It is woven into your breath, your thoughts, your smallest decisions each day. And when you live with that awareness, life no longer feels like a foggy road you stumble through. It becomes a guided journey, where every step carries meaning beyond the present moment. Because in the end, living with awareness does not mean living more tense. It means living more true. And in a world where everything is easy to wash away, and that awareness is what keeps a person standing, both in this life and in the reality waiting ahead. The greatest lesson from this journey is simple. Live as if every moment matters because it truly does. In daily life, you can begin in a very simple way. Pay attention to your choices when no one is watching, how you spend your time alone, how you respond to negative thoughts before they become action, how you treat others when there is no obvious benefit. That is where your real character is being formed. Train yourself to slow down before you speak, before you react, before you make a decision that may carry long consequences. Not because you are terrified of mistakes, but because you refuse to live on autopilot. And if you fall, do not let shame drag you further. Return quickly, and because returning is always lighter than continuing in the wrong direction. Finally, remember that life is not given simply to exist. It is given to prepare for a reality larger than this one. Every day you live with awareness is a day you place another brick correctly into your own future. If this message resonates with you, join the Prophetic History Explained community so you can continue exploring deep and awakening lessons about faith, the lives of the prophets, the unseen world, and the true meaning of human life. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel so you can support us in creating more meaningful, high-quality, and truly awakening videos in the days ahead.